What you're about to see isn't just rare photos. Each shot has a mind-blowing story that few people know about. Take this photo, for example.
Getting ready for the big day, sometime around 1956 by the looks of it. Putting on the lipstick, probably feeling a mix of nerves and excitement right before walking down the aisle. That big poofy dress and those little gloves were really the style for brides back then. Here's Marilyn Monroe taking a dip in the pool around 1960, looking pretty relaxed without all the makeup. This might have been taken at the house she shared with Arthur Miller in Connecticut. Just a casual, candid moment, a bit different from her usual glamorous image. That's Grace Kelly, the definition of elegance in the 1950s. She went from being a top Hollywood actress in films like Rear Window to actual royalty when she married Prince Rainier of Monaco. This photo captures that perfect mix of Hollywood glamour and regal poise she had. Well, look at that, a young Joe Biden sporting a beard back in his early days. This photo's likely from the late 60s or early 70s, probably before or right as he started his political career. Definitely a different look than the clean-shaven guy we're used to seeing. There's Natalie Wood getting touched up by the hair and makeup crew on the set of a movie. Judging by the code, it's likely This Property is Condemned from '66. Gives you a little peek behind the curtain at the controlled chaos of getting an actress ready for a scene. This shot's from Chicago's train platforms in July 1941, taken by John Vachon. Look at all those hats. Seems like every man wore one back then. People relied heavily on trains for getting around, and you can almost feel the summer heat and anticipation on that platform. Here's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. watching President Lyndon B. Johnson on TV, likely during a major speech about civil rights. You can see the focus on Dr. King's face as he takes in the president's words. Looks like he's watching with other colleagues in a living room setting. That's Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, causing a scene at the United Nations General Assembly in October 1960. He got furious during a debate about colonialism and Soviet actions in Eastern Europe. He famously took off his shoe and pounded it on the desk in protest. That ain't no real wampa. It's actor Des Webb inside the creature suit on the set of The Empire Strikes Back around 1979 to 80. Shows you the work that went into practical effects before CGI took over everything. Must have been pretty hot inside that furry getup. Hard to recognize him, but that's Arnold Schwarzenegger at his very first bodybuilding competition in Graz, Austria, 1963. He was only 16 years old, just starting out on the path that would lead him to massive fame. Quite a contrast to the physique he developed later on. That striking woman is actress Marceline Bertrand, Angelina Jolie's mother, photographed in the late 70s. She had acting ambitions herself, but stepped back to raise her family after her marriage to Jon Voight ended. You can definitely see the family resemblance, especially in the eyes. These fellas are out for a cruise in a classic convertible. Looks like an early 50s Chevy, maybe somewhere scenic like Hawaii, judging by the plates. Rocking the sunglasses and enjoying the open road captures that carefree American car culture vibe from the era. Seems like they're having a good time on vacation or leave. Looks like break time for these auto workers, probably at a Soviet factory like the Vaz plant that made Ladas. Gathered around a makeshift table, maybe playing cards or dominoes to pass the time. Just a candid glimpse of everyday life on the assembly line back then. There's President Kennedy and Jackie watching the America's Cup races off Newport back in September '62. They're aboard the USS Joseph P. Kennedy Jr., the destroyer named for his brother killed in World War II. Both Kennedys loved the sea, and this captures them enjoying a day on the water. This studio portrait from around 1880 shows three men in full samurai armor, posing with traditional weapons like a bow, spear, and commander's baton. Taken by Kusakabe Kimbei, it captures the image of the samurai class years after they were officially disbanded. These photos were popular with tourists wanting a glimpse of old Japan. There's Steven Spielberg hanging out with his star E.T. on the set of the movie back around 81 or 82. Gives you a good look at the puppet they used, all wrapped up in that famous blanket in the bike basket. Man, that movie was something else when it came out. That's Dean Martin taking a break next to a big old movie camera with Angie Dickinson looking over him. This was on location for the classic western Rio Bravo, made back in 1959. Dino played the drunk deputy, and Dickinson played the tough gal named Feathers. Take a look at this scene from the golden age of comic books, probably the 1940s. These women are hand collating the pages for comics like Superman or Batman before they got stapled. Before fancy machines, this huge workforce put every single comic book together by hand, page by page. Here's a snapshot of mid-century tourism, likely the 1950s, judging by that Ford station wagon. You got the family or group getting ready to board the City Tour Deluxe bus. bus. Back then, hopping on a bus like this was a popular way to see the sights in a new town. This photo by Jack Delano captures a family of African-American migrants stopped by the roadside in North Carolina, July 1940. They were heading from Florida up to New Jersey, seeking better jobs and opportunities during the Great Migration. Their car is piled high with everything they own, showing the tough journey they faced. Here's a colorized view of Venice's Grand Canal around the turn of the 20th century. You see the gondolas gliding past the classic architecture, with the Santa Maria della Salute church standing out. These kinds of tinted photos were popular souvenirs for travelers back then. That's Jamie Lee Curtis around 1978, right when she became famous as the star of the horror movie Halloween. She came from Hollywood royalty. Her folks were Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh. This photo catches her fresh-faced look early in her long career. These folks are standing inside the ruins of Hitler's mountain retreat, the Berghof, in 1949. They're looking out through the space where his huge picture window used to be, overlooking the Bavarian Alps. The place was bombed during the war and later completely leveled. Check out Bruce Lee's actual workout routine sheet from May 27, 1965. It lists exercises like squats, curls, and push-ups, showing the exact weights and reps he was doing. Shows the incredible discipline and detailed planning he put into his training way back then. Classic slice of Americana here, the parking lot of a Thrifty Mart grocery store in West Covina, California, 1959. Look at all those beautiful mid-century cars, like that orange 58 Chevy. Takes you right back to the look and feel of suburban life back then. That's Robert F. Kennedy grabbing a bite at a drive-in while campaigning in West Virginia back in 1960. He's perched on a car, looking like he's trying to connect with the everyday folks. Drive-ins like this were a huge part of American culture in those days. This is the inside of the White House looking like a bomb hit it during the massive renovation from 1948 to 1952. President Truman ordered it because the whole structure was dangerously unstable. They basically built a new steel frame inside the original stone walls. Pretty wild sight. An entire apartment building being moved on rails. This kind of thing actually happened, especially in Eastern Europe, to save buildings when cities were being redeveloped. Incredible engineering feat, slowly sliding tons of concrete and brick down the tracks. There's Winston Churchill again, ready for a swim, likely at a beach resort somewhere in France. This photo probably dates from the 1920s or 30s between the wars. Gives you a rare glimpse of the famous prime minister just relaxing by the seaside. Here's Jamie Lee Curtis again, this time lounging by the pool sometime in the early 80s. She's got a different look here compared to her late 70s photos, maybe a bit more sophisticated, still rocking those wedge shoes that were popular back then. That's the queen of disco herself, Donna Summer, looking glamorous probably sometime in the late 70s. Check out that sequined top and flowing skirt pure disco era style right there. She absolutely dominated the charts back then with hits that got everyone on the dance floor. Meet Margaret Hamilton, lead software engineer for the Apollo space program, standing next to the code she and her team wrote. That massive stack is the navigation software that landed astronauts on the moon in 1969. Really puts the amount of work involved into perspective, huh? This worker at the EMI plant in London is doing quality control on Beatles LPs back in 1965. Looks like she's checking pressings of Rubber Soul, surrounded by huge stacks of records and covers. Shows you the sheer volume of production needed when Beatlemania was at its peak. These two fellas are guardian angels patrolling the New York City subway back in 1980. The group was formed by volunteers to help combat crime on the trains, easily recognizable by their red berets and jackets, though not worn here. They were a visible presence meant to make riders feel safer during a rough time for the city. Hardly looks like the future president, but that's a young Theodore Roosevelt during his time at Harvard in the late 1870s. Before the Rough Rider image, he was apparently a pretty skinny guy who struggled with asthma. Quite a transformation from this fella to the larger-than-life figure he became. Yeah, that's George Clooney again, likely a school photo from the mid-70s, way before the fame. You can see the era written all over that hairstyle and patterned shirt, just a regular-looking guy back then. That fresh-faced guy with the big smile is Stephen Colbert, back in his college days around 1984. Long before the Colbert Report or late-night TV, he was just another student. You wouldn't necessarily guess the sharp comedian he'd turn into from this picture. There's a super young Jim Carrey trying to thumb a ride back in 1981 when he was just 19, full of that manic energy even then, long before hitting it big in movies. Just a kid from Canada trying to make his way. These are American paratroopers from the 101st Airborne getting briefed in France, March 1945. They shaved their heads into mohawks to intimidate the enemy before jumping across the Rhine River into Germany. Gives you a sense of the mindset before heading into a major battle. That's actress Martha Heyer, likely in a publicity photo from the 1950s or early 60s. Looks like a classic Hollywood glamour shot, maybe playing up a bit of playful allure with the towel. She was known for playing sophisticated characters on screen. Actress Charlotte Rampling, striking a pose back in 1976. She always had this cool, intense presence, known for taking on some pretty bold roles. This photo definitely captures that striking, somewhat mysterious quality she projected. There's Jane Seymour relaxing outdoors sometime in the 1970s. This was likely around the time she became famous worldwide for playing solitaire in the James Bond movie Live and Let Die. Just a natural, easygoing look from that era. Classic Venice Beach scene from the late 70s or maybe 1980. Roller skating was huge then, and the fashion was something else. Short shorts, tube socks, crop tops, the whole deal. Just captures that sunny, carefree California vibe perfectly. This picture shows a woman with an infant carrier shopping in what looks like a Soviet grocery store during the later years of the USSR. The empty refrigerated cases are pretty stark, hinting at the shortages that became common. Gives you a glimpse into the challenges of daily life back then. Check out these high school graduates in the Soviet Union around 1989. They're wearing the traditional uniform dark dresses with those white aprons and big hair bows. Gotta love those late 80s hairstyles they're rocking too. That was the look back then. This tough-looking fella was a rural mail carrier way up in Sweden back in 1900. That massive fur coat wasn't just for show. He needed it to survive the brutal winters while making his rounds. Imagine trudging through snow like that just to deliver the mail. Here's the pool scene at the El Rancho Vegas Hotel back in July 1942. El Rancho was one of the first big hotel casinos on what became the Las Vegas Strip. Even with the war going on, folks were still trying to relax and enjoy the desert sun. That's Benito Mussolini getting roughed up and arrested during street protests in Italy, 1915. Back then, before he became dictator, he was involved in radical politics. This was during demonstrations over whether Italy should enter World War I. It's uncanny how much these two look alike. King George V of Britain and his first cousin, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. This photo was taken in Berlin in 1913 when they attended a royal wedding, both wearing German military uniforms. Just 1 year later, their countries would be at war with Germany. That's actress Anita Ekberg, star of La Dolce Vita, looking pretty fierce with a bow and arrow outside her place. Reports from the Times say she had a run-in with aggressive photographers staking out her villa. Apparently, things got heated, leading to this unusual standoff. Here's Marilyn Monroe sharing a laugh with comedy legend Groucho Marx back in 1949. This was from the movie Love Happy, one of Marilyn's earliest film roles before she became a household name. She definitely looks thrilled to be working with a star like Groucho. Check out this clever setup. The Motormat Drive-In from Los Angeles, 1948. Instead of car hops, they had this conveyor belt system on rails that delivered your food tray right to your car window. Even had little awnings to keep the sun off your grub. That's Colonel T.E. Lawrence, better known as Lawrence of Arabia, riding a camel sometime around 1916. He was the British officer who became famous helping lead the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire. Getting ready for the big day, sometime around 19